If you give me the best 5 players and we put them against the most experienced team in VCT, my 5 players are better. We're gonna win.
The level of Valorant is kind of dog shit.
What were you guys going through before you joined this roster?
Before I joined this roster, I was obviously at LEVIATÁN, and before that, I was actually coaching in APAC, Elevated. I got the offer from Lev, and we won Americas and placed top 3, and then yeah, now I'm here.
I got into the Dota scene back in like 2016. Started making videos. I come from like a sports background and kind of wanted to bring sort of like some of the sports stuff that I learned from playing and coaching like traditional sports into esports. Always still wanting to be a coach, but you know, it's hard when you have no connections, you have no background in Counter-Strike, nobody knows who you are. So I got a shot working with Ascend as a content creator, and their Game Changers team was going into split. And so I just was like, you know, let me help you prepare for this like last split. Go from not coaching at all to, you know, 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, whatever. And then obviously Ascend pulled out of Valorant. And so here I am, I guess, working with you guys now.
What were the challenges that you faced when you were transitioning between roles and you're transitioning between organizations?
If you've ever been in like a content creator journey or you work for yourself, you kind of just become very self-reliant and everything gets done the way that you want it all the time because you're the only person that's responsible for everything. So it took a little bit of time every time that I started to work with a team just to like remember that, okay, well, people aren't always going to see everything the way that I see things. Obviously, you have to respect other people's vision of things and try to understand them and come from where they are to find like a common ground so you can actually work together.
Bhavin, my next question is for you. What do you think is the biggest challenge that GE has faced in the last few years, and what is it about these two in particular that can help us solve the problems?
And everyone thinks so there's a huge player pool to choose from, but if you want to make it to masters or champions, you need certain players. We have brought in, Juv3nile and Elevated who have fresh approach to everything from building a team to the kind of players they want, combined with the fact that we are in a better position financially to pick up some players we wanted to. We have formed a pretty good team. So obviously it's always challenging because every team in the league wants to win, and there's oftentimes a situation where you want a certain player but you have to pay a bombshell for that player, or the demands are ridiculous and it becomes impossible to match what other people are offering sometimes. So but that being said, I think we got all the players we had targeted.
Which brings me to my next question. That's for you, Juvenile. What was it like to coach a team like Leviathan? A team which has superstars like Aspas. Do you think a team can win without a star player as big as him?
Oh, definitely you can win without a star like him, but like I don't know. I don't want to put too much pressure on the players, bro, but like this team is very talented, similar to Lev. But what I say about Lev is definitely like aim-wise, bro, it's the best team I've ever coached. Everyone was so insane. And the thing is, coaching that team at that level too, like that experience, like you don't have to teach much. One thing I try to take from them is like Aspas's routine, bro. Like the reason he's so consistent is because he does everything consistent, and I think that's important for professional players, especially as this gets more and more serious, to like take it to that level of seriousness. And that's something that I'm definitely trying to bring to GE in general, and trying to let the players know, like, look, if you want to be great, you have to be consistent. Being there sort of showed me appreciation for fans, like the Leviathan community, the LATAM community in general. Like they're just amazing, bro. They're amazing. Very similar to the Indian community. Like everyone shows love. Like I've heard all these bad things about the Indian community. Just bro, I have not received a single negative message. I get messages, DMs every single. Even if I lose and I get something, it's fine. I've been through CS:GO Lounge. They're not going to be worse than CS:GO Lounge, I promise. People would lose like I said, a P250, and I'm getting death threats because they lost their P250. So I'm not worried about the fans as far as negativity, because we're going to win. At least, we're going to look good in the server. I think I'm excited for the fans this season, and I'm expecting the success that they want for sure.
Have you tried much of Indian food?
So my grandparents were missionaries in India, actually. So my dad actually grew up in India for 13 years. And so everybody in my family on my dad's side knows how to cook like curry, like in the super traditional style. So I grew up eating Indian food all the time. And it's probably my favorite ethnicity of cuisine, I would say. There's something about just like a really good like plate with, you know, some rice, got some naan or like paratha, and like 3 different curries, got some raita, and like just eat it with your hands. The best.
Nice.
What are the goals this year? Is to play better Valorant than everybody on a consistent level. I mean, obviously winning is super important. All the like incentive structures in VCT are more and more slanted towards winning. So I just want to play really good Valorant, because I feel like we're still at a point in this game where, I don't know, what are we, 4 years in, where the level of Valorant is kind of dog shit. Sorry for for swearing on the podcast, but like I think we've got sort of to this point where the individual skill of the players is really, really good. Some of the map ideas are now is where we're kind of getting to sort of some weird issues for me as far as how Valorant is played, where I think people just like fundamentally don't understand this game that well still. The tac shooter stuff people get, but this is not Counter-Strike. That's like the biggest thing. This is not Counter-Strike. There are so many moving pieces, and I still feel like we're at this place where we have not evolved our thinking as a community when it comes to that type of stuff. Like we should be counter picking agents. Like there's certain agents that are really good against other agents, and people just like don't even consider that at all when they build comps. You know, there's been a comp on Ascent that has been a comp for 3 years, and nobody seems to be able to figure out how to beat this comp, even though the play patterns for every team in the entire world are the exact same. And the fact that we're not like actively building a comp to beat this Ascent comp when you know what your opponent is going to do every single second of the entire game is insane to me. Like, I don't understand why this is not happening. And you see this time and time and time again, where the teams that dictate the meta are the teams that win. Like Fnatic had Lotus, right? They had the best Lotus comp. Everybody started to play the Lotus comp, but teams were just like letting Fnatic play this map that they were auto winning for an entire year. Like they were 19-0 in this map, and people were not banning Lotus because they were just copying Fnatic and being like, oh, well, we'll be able to play it like they do if we just copy them. And that's not how it works.
So, for the layman who doesn't understand the difference between a head coach and an assistant coach, can you please tell me what the difference is like?
It's like the head coach, like pretty much like I said, is the final decision and all that kind of stuff. When people go back and look at your year, they're not going to be looking at the assistant coach. They're going to look at the head coach. So it's on your shoulders to make the decisions and make the right call. But as an assistant coach, like it just depends. Like for me, like the reason why I grabbed Elevated is because, like I said, I wanted to grab someone I feel like who was strong in some of the areas I was not as strong in. Data analyst, being able to come up with very unique comps, stuff like that. Like that stuff that we may not use, but we may. Like, you know what I mean? Assistant coach, I feel like it's tough because you have to pick and choose where you want your voice to be heard, because you do have less space to talk. You have less space to tell the players. You have less space to give your input. So it's definitely a balancing act on, like, what is worth talking about, what is worth giving my input, and what's not.
You're almost like the hype man for the head coach. Like whatever they want is as the vision needs to kind of be like a united front between the two of you when it actually goes to the team. And since everything kind of stems from us, the culture stems from us, we need to be like super solid. And so it's my job to give Juv3nile as many tools to use as possible, and then basically just sort of like do whatever the grunt work is that he needs done that he doesn't have time for or doesn't want to do. And when you actually go to the team, you have like already come to a conclusion together that then gets presented, like, this is what we're doing. And then if the team has any questions about it, it's my job to back up whatever Juv3nile is saying, essentially.
The next question that I have to ask is also a very popularly asked question on Twitter. What are your coaching styles, and what makes you different from other coaches?
One of the big things is just the amount of experience I have as a player, man. So 2001, I was on the best team in Medal of Honor. Most people have never even heard of that game. That was when I was like 14, man, like 12. I don't remember how old I was. I had professional experience for quite a while in CS. Top 4 NA level. Like, I played with your favorite players like Skadoodle, Naf, Fugly, Daps, like, Shazam. Those guys were all my teammates in CS and stuff like that. So, like, I have a very in-depth knowledge as far as like decision making in in-game play, not just the big scope, also micro plays, like, right? So like if someone makes a mistake in game, like, bro, I'm gonna tell you you did something wrong and this is what you should have done. And so yeah, so just like my hands-onness as far as day to day, I think like round to round, like even I'll speak or type to players, like I'm not afraid to talk there in practice. I think that's really what sets me apart from most other coaches. I think most other coaches are sort of afraid to step on toes or give too much input in the middle of the game when like the best time to learn is right then. The second you make that mistake, that's when he's in the thought process. That's when he knows. That's when it's better to explain versus you go back and explain at the end of the day. This guy don't even remember what he was thinking in that moment. He's like, I don't know what I was thinking.
What are your thoughts on the difference between the APAC server and the North American server?
So for me, since I did coach in both of these regions, coach in APAC even before GE, one thing I love about APAC and one of the reasons why I even took this job is that just based off culture, they just respect your leader, your elders. Like you just automatically almost get respect. Versus NA, like these players. I mean, ego exists, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's also creates great players. You have to have a little bit of an ego to be a great player. Um, but yeah, just having to gain that trust, build that trust, it's just a little bit tougher, I feel like, with NA players. That's definitely something that I love about APAC as far as that goes. And the work ethic. Um, I wouldn't say there's like more work ethic. I mean, maybe a little bit, actually. A little bit more work ethic. Like APAC and China is going to start becoming better and better because when you're playing an extra 3-4 hours a day, man, like it makes a difference over a year.
Also, I think one thing that APAC has that maybe no other region other than maybe China has is the willingness to be creative and just do stuff. Just the creativity, I think, is higher in this region than maybe any other region. And it feels like I could just grab, 5 players out of like the top leaderboard and ranked and just like put them in a team and be like, you're going to play this role, you're going to play this agent, you're going to play this. And they would be like, all right, cool. Whereas if you went to Americas and you're like, okay, I need you to play Cypher, they'd be like, I haven't played Cypher. I don't play Sentinel. I only play, Reyna and Jet. and there would be sort of like much less willingness to just kind of like go with the flow and try stuff out and like explore that side of the game because everybody kind of more cares about like, this is my identity and this is who I am. And like, you're not going to change me, coach. Right. Whereas in APAC, it's a little different than that.
And that's what brings me to my next question. This was also, something that was asked on Twitter by someone called Sagar Agarwal. How will you adapt to the APAC playstyle, which is a lot more explosive? Sometimes there's a bit of chaos involved as well.
Like I'm trying to bring over some of the defaulting, and like I'm not trying to take away from the explosiveness. I feel like there's tons of different playstyles that can and will work. So like honestly, I plan on being good at all of them.
It's not even just like when you come to a region, it's when you come to a team, you have to like figure out who the team is as an identity and then like do your best to raise up the parts of that team's identity that makes them really good, but then also, introduce other aspects that make them more of a complete team. Like, for example, if we were to go to like Paper X, we can't just teach them the default, right? This team really, really wants to just be going forward. They want to be sending it. They want to just like, play as fast as possible. And so if you go to them and you say, hey, no, you have to play slow now, that's not going to work. You have to like give them the tools to play fast and to like be who they are as players, but then, introduce some other things that kind of help balance it out. So it's not just a completely one-dimensional play style.
What would be your philosophy about working with the academy team?
Yeah, I've already made it pretty aware to Rushy. Like, I want to be involved. Like, for me, like the idea of like raising up the entire Indian community, like that's something that does interest me. That is something I do want to do. Like, as much as we don't have Indian players. Like, this is Indian org. Like, something that I'm proud of. It's something that I that I think I can make a real impact. And that was one of the reasons I did join GE, is I thought I could make a real impact here in the community as a whole. Even if it's just like a little bit on my off day, I come in, I just watch scrims, watch what's going on, help out a little bit. It's definitely something that I do want to be involved with quite a bit. Yeah, because it's important. It's important. Like, representation is important. Being able to see, like even when SK Rossi was in the league, like all these things, like representation matters. And so for me, it's definitely important.
What is your most controversial Valorant hot take? Bhavin, let's start with you.
I'll give you 2.
Nice. Give me 3, give me 10, as many as you want.
I'll give you 2. The first one is that I think that the gap between tier 2 and even tier 3 players and tier 1 is very, very small. And I think that you could take a duelist from a tier 3 team, put them under a good coach and a good system, in like 6 months they would be a tier 1 player that is competing at the highest level, maybe even sooner than that. So I think that we sort of like idolize these tier 1 players, like, oh, this guy's insane, and yet there's like some tier 3 kid you've never even heard of that has better aim than like 80% of the players in the league right now. And then
Who are you thinking of?
I mean, dude, Patrick who, motherfucker? The other one is that I think that Jett is probably the worst agent in the game, just objectively. If people weren't so comfortable playing Jett and like hadn't grown up playing Jett in Valorant, I think if you just objectively look at her kit, she's like one of the worst agents in the game, and in my opinion, that makes her insanely overrated.
GE is gonna make top 3 of champions this year.
Hey, that's not a controversial hot take. That's a good opinion. That's the one that
yeah.
you should have. That's a
If
biased.
Ask anybody else that I answer that to anybody else, they're gonna be like, you're crazy. I promise.
Not as spicy as I was hoping for, but that will do.
I'm spicy,
That will
man.
do.
I will tell you the truth. That's the thing. Like, I don't know. I'm just gonna be honest with my words. I don't know.
All right, that's good enough for me.
You guys are gonna look like knights in shining armor, and I'm gonna be piece of shit.
You went up through someone's throat, bro.
Let's now jump into the meat of the topic. Let's start discussing our team, our players. It was probably one of the biggest tryouts that has been conducted. Like, not a lot of teams will be trialing this many players. Does that like give us too many options that puts us in a decision paralysis?
When I took this job and they told me that we're about to do like a 90+ player trial, I got really worried. Cause like, bro, like the reality is like at least 45 of those players never have a chance of making the team, right? But what I will say is that as they made the process very easy, like I just had to show up and watch a YouTube video, and they handled everything else, which I really appreciate because I would not have wanted to hold a 90-person trial if I'm the one organizing it. And so like that was the thing that definitely worried me most. But I feel like it worked out really well. We got to see a lot of players, and even if they're not players that we picked up, they're players that are now on my radar because I see them. So I'm gonna keep an eye on their growth, or you know what I mean. Maybe they weren't ready for tier 1 right now, but you never know. 6 months, a year from now, next year, these are players that I'm definitely gonna be revisiting and taking a closer look at because I got to see them in this open trial. And so for me, that was just a really cool part of the process for sure.
The person who was majorly responsible for doing the heavy lifting and hosting this 90-player tryout was Hell Ranger. The amount of work he's put in it's like absurd.
We wanted to see if we can find like a diamond in the rough, and I think like we were pretty successful throughout the trials because I think every player we have picked has gone through the tryout process. We could have made our lives much easier and just trialed 20 players. The thought process was, even if there's one player who other teams aren't looking at and is really good and the coaches feel they can develop him, why not?
Patrick Watson, we would have never found that guy. If we didn't do a 90-person trial, we would have never found that guy. Or
Yeah.
Patrick who? Let me correct myself. Patrick who? Patrick Watson's so much ore, by the way. Please, Valve, just let him add like 3 letters, okay? Or Valve, I'm so sorry. Riot, please let him add like 3 letters. Oh no. Okay. And even some of the other players, like I don't know if we would have landed on those players if it wasn't for the trial period, and which is very, very nice.
I think just to add to that, Patrick Watson was in the list, but he just joined VLT. So thanks to VLT or thanks to Anna for letting him trial. And, like because he had the dates, he was given a free reign to trial. I think we found a really great player.
You'd come in, watch the VODs, be like, okay, well, I think we're like really, really kind of lucky to have so many options in like these roles, but maybe these roles are a little bit weaker, and I'm like desperately looking for, okay, who's a player that I really think is tier 1 caliber in this particular role. And then like we go to another phase of the trials, or we bring in another group of players, and I see somebody, I'm like, oh, the contrast between this person and everybody else that I've watched playing these agents is like night and day. That guy definitely goes on to the next stage, or that guy is definitely our person.
Patrick Watson / Yokam / Patrick who, a rather new name to the list. It doesn't have that much T1 experience, or even T2 experience for that matter. And then we have another guy like VALORANT, also a person who was destroying everybody in the tryouts, who was an amazing duelist. But now that we have these 2 duelists, who's going to be the primary one? Who's going to be the secondary one?
Obviously, someone has to switch role. I'm not gonna run double duelist all season, so yeah, we definitely have to switch roles. And it's gonna be Patrick who playing duelist and VALORANT playing sentinel. And for me, the reason I made that decision is because like pretty early on, I was pretty confident I wanted Patrick Watson for sure, or Patrick who. Bro, he's just so good. and raw, right? So like when you're that raw, like this guy's got like 6 months of playing competitive Valorant, like 6 months. You know what I mean? Like when you're that raw, that just you're this talented already, bro. The sky is the limit. I don't think he even cares about pressure. This is also a bonus to being this inexperienced. Is like when you're this young and this inexperienced, like you don't even the pressure doesn't matter. Like it's irrelevant to you because you don't get how big the moment is. You don't get how important this is to your future, to your life. And so I think that's one of the good things for him too is that he's so inexperienced that everything is just gonna get soaked in. And also like his drive, his like excitement to be here. Like bro, this guy he texted me the other day. He's like, bro, I just went from tier 10 to tier 1. Like that's fucking insane. Like just to have that like that type of vibe in the team, I think helps a lot, right? You see, even just in real sports, right? A lot of times there'll be this experienced team, and you bring in this young rookie who's just super talented, and like he just gives everyone else that same drive of like, I remember being that motivated. I remember being that excited to play, and so you feed off that a little bit. And then for Udatan, bro, he just played too good not to pick him up. And I saw him play Sentinel like you've seen it multiple times throughout this region, and this is the reason why like I was confident in him being able to make the switch, is because like you've seen Meteor, you've seen Tex, you've seen these duelists, Leaf, these duelists switch over to Sentinel and put up insane numbers. Like in my opinion, at this point, it's your duelist is your fragger, and your Sentinel's number two. Like those two got to be your real fraggers, because they're the ones. Sentinel's going to go make his space solo, and your duelist is going to go make the space for the team. And then for Patrick Watson, it's just learning everything. Like this guy knows. He knows a decent amount, but he knows nothing. You know what I mean? Like this, nothing, Jon Snow. This kid is, he definitely has a lot to learn as far as anything else. But he's every day. I feel like I see him improving. I see him learning, and like I'm constantly texting him or messaging him, and he's it's always positive feedback and stuff like that. So
Udatan, comparatively more experienced than Patrick Watson, but the highest achievement that he's ever gotten to is second place in Ascension. So do you think this lack of tier 1 experience is going to hold them back in any way?
No.
No?
So I think experience is super overrated. Experience is, especially in Valorant, bro. Like I was there for a whole split too. I played 6 matches, man. Like you know what I mean? It's not like I got an insane amount of experience just being there. Like yeah, yes, it helps. Yes, it matters. But at the end of the day, like talent trumps all, bro. If you give me the best 5 players and we put them against the most experienced team in VCT, my 5 players are better. We're gonna win. That's just the reality. I do think there are moments like if we're at champions top 3, okay, then maybe experience matters, then pressure matters. But for day-to-day VCT matches, bro, this is the same thing you've been doing for the last year, 2 years in scrims. It's the same fucking thing on stage. It's no difference.
Now let's talk about the most experienced player on the team. Do you really think Papichulo is the best controller out there when you compare him to big stars like Mako or Monier or people who are just absolutely cracked at the controller role? And Papichulo is gonna be up against those guys. Do you think he can keep up?
He's got really good aim, man. Like I don't know if it's the best on the team because Patrick Watson and Udatan are so good at aiming. I mean, our whole team can aim. I think you guys will be really excited about seeing the talent in the server. But I feel like his aim is pretty good. And bro, I literally clutch king, bro. Clutch king. You put this guy in any kind of clutch, and I feel like in my head he's got a chance to win it, a very good chance to win it. And so like, I think that's when he thrives his most, is in a clutch situation when he's just using his brain and his aim to just like diff people.
One of the most important things is like player personality, role fit. Patrick, who is slightly more fearless, you could tell him to go in like to a 5-stacked site with no utility, and he'll just go. Like if that's the play, he's
charging insert. Right? Let's go.
And he might even get 2. Whereas Udatan is just a little bit more of a cerebral player, and this has really come out as we let him play the Sentinel role. Like the way that he communicates with information that he gets is so good. Like I was worried because like during the trials, I couldn't hear him that well because his mic was kind of low, and I was like, how's like Korean English gonna mix with like Russian English and Filipino English? Like, are they gonna be able to understand each other? But man, Udatan's comms might be the best on the team, like straight up. Like the stuff that he's giving us is so good, and the way that he plays off of his utility, even though he's like, this is like maybe the 300th cam he's ever thrown on Cypher, and he's still just like getting really critical information and instantly getting it to the team so we can make decisions. So that little bit of extra like cerebralness to him is going to make him an insane player on the Sentinel role. And then as far as Papichulo goes, again, I think it's really just like the perfect role player fit. like personality wise. He's a little bit on the quieter side, but you can just tell that the quietness, it's like stone cold, like
Yeah, he's a killer, bro.
he's like a stone cold assassin, right?
Yeah, he's
Like
a killer,
he's a
bro.
quiet assassin. And so when he's in the situation where it's like, you know, there's a team running him down, you need him to make the right decision and not throw the round, like get one, get out. He's getting that one, he's getting out. He might even get a second one as they try and chase him down. And then obviously the clutch kind of just like comes hand in hand with that. So it really is just the perfect role fit for all these players, I think.
Which brings me to the next question. Why Crystal?
He's at the very least on every single team's radar, based off his just the same with Freeing, right? Him and Freeing, those two in particular, like they just destroyed the CN Ascension. Every team at the very least took a look at them or at least considered them. And then for me, like I said before, like the region, our region, like I never wanted to import unless I can't find what I want here, right? Like only if there's not in a comparable version here. And for us, Initiator actually seems like a very weak role in APAC in general. There's not a ton of options, especially the good ones are taken. We had to look outside of the region, and really he's the top free agent, outside of this region, as far as the initiators go, for sure. He was one of the first people here. He flew in like a week after signing, and he was good to go. No really restrictions or anything like that. His English is already getting better. His English is good. Like it's good. It's just a Russian accent. It's just like something that even our players are trying to adjust to. Like early on, we were just joking like we can't understand him. Like he called something, we just couldn't understand it, right? And it's just something that he's getting better at already. Our players are getting more used to understanding. Like when I first joined GE, I couldn't understand the accent half the time, right? But now, I've been around it enough. Same with the players, been around it enough that it's gonna be it's gonna be no issue.
Coming to the last player, probably the most important one, our IGL, Kelly S. Now, he's played for Oasis and he's played for a lot of good teams. But what do you think are his primary strengths and why him? Why Kelly S?
Kelly, we approached actually a couple of months before the trial started. Not a couple of months, let's say 45 days, right? And with him, he was, at the risk of losing his spot on his current team if he gave the trials for us. So he had a decision to make, and obviously, I think he was supporting his family, so it was a tough one for him. But he said, "Look, I'll give the trials for sure." The rest of the days, right? Like he was on my Valorant list, and I was keeping, just an eye on him. Every day, the guy had been grinding, just to prep for the trials. And when the day came, I think he was one of the most consistent players which played, in the trials, be it in terms of being vocal, be it, his leadership capabilities, be it, even his mechanics.
So for my type of IGL that I would prefer is not necessarily someone who does micro all the time, but someone who has the capability to micro. Because there will be really intense moments. There's tense situations where like people's brains shut off. That's just the reality. When you get nervous, when you get in these high pressure situations, your brain almost shuts off. And so I want someone to be able to essentially think for them. Tell them, put this here, go now. Whatever the case may be, being able to micro in that kind of way. And I feel like he was, out of all the IGLs we trialed in APAC, he was the best. He was the best in that way. And so like he brings everything I want. He shows up early to practice every day. He comes with strats. He's a great leader type. He's a little bit older. He's 24, 25. He's a very confident person. And you can just tell by looking at him, he's a very confident person. And I feel like that's very, very important as an IGL, like being unwaverable in these moments, in these situations, and realizing, even if you make a bad call, like, it's just, it's not your fault. Even the wrong call can still work in this game. That's one of the things I do like about this game. It doesn't matter if you go into a 4 stack at A at Haven. If you dump your util correctly, you're going to kill all 4. It doesn't really matter. That confidence and that unwaverability is going to be a big thing for us throughout the season, for sure.
During these trials, every time that I would watch Kelly IGL, he would be like getting the new players that he hadn't played with involved in sort of like the culture of the team, even though it's just like 3 scrims or whatever. He'd be like bringing them in, like making plays for them, hyping them up. And that's the type of leadership that you really need on a team. And on top of that, being a former duelist, he's not afraid to make plays, right? He's not afraid to be like, all right, something needs to happen. I'm the only person in position. I'm going to make this play for my team.
Yeah, I mean the thing is too, like at the end of the day, like this is turning into a game where like your IGL has to be able to frag. You can't. No offense, right? Like FNS, Boaster, these guys, the whole community knows them. Obviously, they struggle sometimes with individual talent. They're great IGLs, great leaders. Don't get it twisted. But you see them struggling a little bit. Where like if they had a little bit more talent, etc., then it would be a little bit easier for their teams. And so I feel like that as a whole, like Kelly S also fragged hard. Like he did really well in the trials as far as individually as well, not just leading.
When it comes to the trials, are there any missed opportunities that we regret?
No, no. We got most people. Almost every. The only thing I regret is. No, I don't even regret it now. Like I did when we didn't get the player we wanted, I regretted it. But now that I see the team we have and like the players and how they're playing together, nah, zero regrets whatsoever. No, not even.
And that regret was regarding Grumble, wasn't it?
Yeah, that Grumble, which is his own personal reasons for why he couldn't. But yeah, he obviously he's a great Sentinel. I used to coach him in Elevated, so I have a decent relationship with him in general. But now seeing Udatan on Sentinel, nah, I don't. This
No
guy,
regrets.
I'm telling you right now, Udatan is about to do very very well this season.
All right, all right. I like the enthusiasm.
Everyone else was okay, but getting Papichulo on board was a bit tough. The buyout was pretty high, as
Ooh.
mentioned. But obviously, for Neos, they were losing one of their star players and backbone of their team. So a lot of negotiations took place until we finally agreed on a number. Both of us were happy with. To be fair, I think Papi is going to be like a top two. I really like. I know we are not supposed to have favorites, but he's like one of my favorite players in all of APAC, not just in our team. And I think he's going to do really well.
What is the team philosophy going to be like?
Yeah, as far as like in-game stuff for me, it's like I tell my players this consistently is like ask for forgiveness, not permission. Make your play and I'll fix it later, right? Don't ever be afraid to play. Don't ever have any fear. Just play fearlessly. Because in this game, like, just take a look at Sentinels at Champs, right? When they were playing groups against Gen G the first time. If you watch, like, I can remember this exact Haven round. So Haven on C. Tens is crouched in a corner, the other guy's crouched in a corner, and they're just crouched in corners, just waiting and hiding, right? And they just get run down. They just jet dashes in, they get Omen Flash, and they're dead, right? In this game, like, you have to play with no fear. Don't play scared. Play to win, not to lose. The team who won champs last year, they're gonna go back to they VOD review the grand finals. They're gonna see tons of mistakes. It's just the reality. It's a team who makes the less mistakes and a team who capitalizes on the other team's mistakes. That's the best team. I'm obviously talking big about the team and all that kind of stuff, but that's because I have real expectations. Like I wouldn't say this if I didn't believe it. I wouldn't say like we're gonna be this or that if I didn't really believe it. Yeah, and then as far as any hate, bro, like fans, just send it to me. I'll take your hate. Don't send it to the players. These are young kids, bro. These are young kids. You don't need to bother them with your hate. Send it to me. I'm the one making the decisions. I'm the one that picked the players. I'm the one doing everything, talking big. So send the hate to me, not to the players, and we'll be good. All right.
I want to be the team that is the sort of like the model of what a team is supposed to function like in professional Valorant. And so I think that we're gonna sort of like show people how you're supposed to play this game.
I just want to see the boys playing on stage. I'm pretty excited, and Happy New Year to all the Indian people out there.
Okay.
Yeah, happy belated Diwali.
Happy belated Diwali.
I can't wait to be there next year, man. I can't wait to be in India next year, man.
I'm gonna feed you a lot of food. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm gonna eat it.
A lot.
I'm gonna eat a lot of food.